On a tense day, a dog begins to bark incessantly at the trunk of a car parked at a shopping mall. When the car's owner returns, he doesn't want the police to see what's inside, because the reason is shocking. But first, if you, like us, love animals, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss any gripping stories. Thank you. Now back to our story. The Saturday sun bathed the shopping mall in golden light, turning its mirrored windows into a shimmering mosaic. Families came and went, carrying shopping bags, their smiles reflecting the joy of a perfect shopping day. In the bustling parking lot, among a maze of cars, an unusual pair was doing their usual patrol. Officer Carlos Montenegro and his partner, Thor, a majestic German shepherd the color of coffee with milk. Carlos adjusted his utility belt as he watched Thor methodically sniff vehicles. After 15 years on the force, Carlos had learned to fully trust his four-legged partner's instincts. Thor wasn't just a police dog. He was a guardian with a sixth sense for situations that required special attention. The day proceeded as usual until, near Sector B of the parking lot, Thor suddenly changed behavior. His ears perked up, his muscular body tensed like a violin string, and his alert eyes focused on an unassuming silver sedan. His bark echoed, not just as a warning, but with urgency and persistence, signals Carlos instantly recognized as signs something was wrong. Approaching the vehicle, Carlos noticed details that his trained eye flagged as concerning. Fresh scratches around the trunk's lock and a faint trace that might have gone unnoticed to a less experienced observer. While examining the car, a man approached. Though his clothes were clean, his face was pale, and his nose bore traces of stress. "That's my car," the man announced, his voice trembling, betraying anxiety Carlos immediately picked up on. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Officer Montenegro. May I see your vehicle registration, please?" Carlos maintained a professional tone, watching the man, who identified himself as Roberto Silva. Roberto's hands visibly trembled as he searched for the documents in his worn wallet. Thor remained alert, his sharp eyes switching between the man and the trunk. Carlos's instincts told him there was more to this than met the eye. "Everything seems fine, but I'll need to check the trunk," Carlos said in a calm yet firm voice. Roberto hesitated, clutching the keys so tightly his knuckles turned white. Thor barked again, this time louder, more insistent. A tense silence seemed to swallow the usual parking lot noise. With visible reluctance, Roberto finally inserted the key into the trunk lock. The metallic click echoed through the still air like thunder. Carlos wasn't prepared for what he saw. Curled in the cramped space was a girl, about 9 years old, staring at them with wide, frightened eyes. The girl, whom Carlos would soon learn was named Lara, remained motionless. Her large, hazel eyes flicked between the adults. Her fragile appearance and the dark circles under her eyes told a story far deeper than that moment in the parking lot. Thor, surprisingly, didn't show aggression. Instead, his posture shifted to one of protective alertness, as if he understood this was more complicated than it seemed. Following protocol, Carlos quickly called for backup. But something in the girl's expression, and in Roberto's protective posture, made him question his first impression. The wail of approaching sirens shattered the tense quiet. Roberto, tears in his eyes, stayed by the car, his hands raised, not in guilt, but in desperation. Little Lara, still in the trunk, didn't show the fear one would expect from a kidnapped child. Her expression held something different, a mixture of resignation and relief that puzzled the officer. "Step away from the vehicle," Carlos ordered, keeping a steady, non-threatening tone. Thor remained alert, but strangely calm for what seemed to be a clear-cut abduction. As the first patrol units arrived, a social worker named Elena Martins approached quietly. Her 40 years of experience showed in the kind eyes behind her thin-framed glasses. With a subtle gesture, Carlos allowed her to approach Lara. "Hi, sweetheart," Elena said gently. "Can I help you out of there?" Lara hesitated, looking to Roberto as if seeking permission. The gesture didn't go unnoticed by the trained professionals. With Elena's help, Lara stepped out of the trunk. Her clothing, though simple, was clean, and on her shoulder hung a small backpack decorated with unicorns. Details that didn't align with a typical kidnapping. The girl instinctively moved toward Roberto, behavior that contradicted the initial narrative. Before they could proceed further, everyone's attention shifted to a well-dressed couple hurrying across the lot. The woman, in a designer suit and heels, ran with practiced grace. The man in a tailored suit wore an expression of concern that seemed rehearsed. "Lara, thank God you're okay." The woman, who identified herself as Patricia Silva, exclaimed as she attempted to hug her daughter. Lara instinctively pulled back, barely but noticeably. Elena caught the subtle motion instantly. Carlos watched the scene with professional scrutiny, noting small inconsistencies that didn't quite fit. Thor, always sensitive to emotional nuances, remained by Lara's side. Roberto's stance was more protective than aggressive. "Mrs. Silva," Carlos addressed the couple, "we're going to need some clarification. When was the last time you saw your daughter?" Marcelo's face darkened. "This is absurd. We are model parents. Roberto has always been the black sheep. He lives like a hermit, makes up stories." "Officer," Elena quietly said, "I think we need to look deeper. There are elements here that don't match a standard abduction." Inside the cozy retrofitted patrol vehicle, Elena watched Lara absent-mindedly play with her backpack zipper. The room was designed to be child-friendly, with teddy bears and a small sketchpad on a side table. "Do you like drawing, Lara?" Elena asked softly, offering some colored pencils. Lara nodded and took a blue pencil with trembling fingers. As she drew, her tense shoulders began to relax. Outside, Carlos questioned Roberto in a separate patrol vehicle. Not handcuffed, but under observation. Despite the situation, Roberto remained calm, almost relieved, as if he had long prepared for this moment. "It started about 2 years ago," Roberto began quietly but firmly. "After Marcelo got that bank promotion, everything became about appearances, parties, connections. Lara started becoming invisible in her own home. Back in the room, Lara added another figure to her drawing. Elena noted that the child figure was always distant from the parents, while an older male, presumably Uncle Roberto, was drawn nearby, often holding shopping bags. "Uncle Roberto always brings food when the fridge is empty," Lara commented spontaneously, coloring the bag. "He taught me to make snacks in my room when Mom and Dad are gone. They say it's important work stuff and I need to understand because I'm grown up now." Her voice carried an unsettling maturity that made Elena write another note in her pad. Outside, voices were growing louder, full of indignation. "Roberto has always been problematic," Patricia insisted, nervously straightening her designer blazer. "He resents our success. Now he's fabricating this neglect story to defame us." Thor, still near the car where Lara had been, perked up at the sound of a soft sob. The girl had begun to cry silently, drawing what appeared to be an empty dinner table. Elena gently offered her a tissue and noticed the unicorn backpack was filled with snack packs and granola bars. "Did you pack this yourself?" she asked. Meanwhile, Carlos received preliminary background check results. Roberto Silva had no criminal record, just a few old traffic tickets. His file showed steady employment as a retired math teacher and a history of donations to child-focused charities. "Elena," Carlos called as she stepped out of the car, her face marked by professional concern. "We need to talk about the neglect indicators I'm seeing. This is more serious than we thought." Carlos nodded, exchanging a glance with Thor, who hadn't left Lara's side, as if he'd known from the start what others were just beginning to uncover. Sometimes true danger hides behind a flawless facade, and sometimes heroes don't look like the ones in fairy tales. Carlos shared his observations with Elena in a private conversation. The signs of emotional neglect, and more worryingly food deprivation, were clear. "We need a welfare check at the Silva's residence," Carlos decided. "I suspect we'll find more to support Lara's story," Elena added, adjusting her glasses. A habit formed over years of needing to stay calm in tough cases. "Mrs. Silva," Carlos addressed her firmly, "we're conducting a more in-depth investigation now." "Mr. Silva," he turned to Marcelo, "your connections are irrelevant. Lara's well-being is our only concern." In the other car, Roberto remained under supervision, watching the scene with a mix of worry and relief. When an officer offered him water, his hands were steadier. "May I show you something?" he asked, holding out his phone. He had documentation, photos, messages, recordings, months of evidence he'd collected, waiting for the right moment. Images of empty fridges, late-night texts from Lara asking for food or saying she was scared, missed calls when her parents were away at social events. "I tried reporting this before," Roberto said, "but Marcelo has influence. My complaints were dismissed before anyone really looked." Inside the car, Lara had finished a series of drawings that spoke louder than any words. Lonely dinners, sleepless nights filled with party noise, moments of comfort when Uncle Roberto arrived with food and stories. Her quiet plea struck Elena straight in the heart. In her 4 decades of service, she knew children rarely lied about the deepest truths. "We'll need a warrant to investigate the residence," Carlos said. "I recommend beginning the evaluation of Mr. Roberto Silva as a potential temporary guardian," Elena suggested. That evening, they arrived at the Silva mansion. Imposing, pristine, nestled in an upscale neighborhood. Carlos, Elena, and a small investigative team were met with tense smiles from Marcelo and Patricia. "As you can see, we offer our Lara the best," Patricia said with a stiff smile. A quiet beep sounded as the heavy wooden doors opened into a vestibule adorned with expensive art. Elena studied everything, her experienced eyes making discreet notes. The atmosphere, though luxurious, felt artificial, like a stage set. Family portraits, strategically placed, showed picture-perfect smiles in carefully posed scenes that looked pulled from a magazine. "We'd like to see Lara's room," Carlos said. He noticed Marcelo's momentary hesitation before leading them up the marble staircase. Thor, ever alert, followed. His nose lifted, as if sensing something beyond what eyes could see. Lara's room, located on the 2nd floor, was... The contradiction was striking. The furniture was expensive, the wallpaper elegant, but there were noticeably no personal belongings. No toys were scattered around. No books lay open on a study desk. No signs of the natural chaos expected in a space inhabited by a 9-year-old girl. Elena opened a perfectly organized closet, discovering dresses and outfits that looked more suited for a photo shoot than a child's everyday life. In the back of a drawer, hidden beneath neatly folded clothes, a notebook caught her eye. In the modern kitchen, equipped with state-of-the-art appliances and a stainless steel refrigerator, the shelves were almost bare. A few bottles of mineral water, decorative fruit, and expired yogurts were the only occupants of the cooled space. Elena flipped through the notebook found in the room and uncovered pages upon pages of outpourings written in a child's handwriting. Stories about lonely nights, loud parties downstairs, ignored pleas for food. Tucked between the pages were receipts for snacks purchased by Roberto and small comforting notes from Nanny. "We found something interesting in the office," one of the investigators called. In an elegant room, a locked drawer revealed piles of unpaid medical bills, including charges for therapy sessions for Lara, sessions that never took place. "We have a court order, Senor Silva," Carlos reminded him calmly. "And every piece of evidence we're finding confirms the accounts of your daughter and Senor Roberto." Thor stood in front of a wall panel, his alert bark drawing Carlos's attention. Behind it, he discovered a concealed safe. After persistent demands from the authorities, Marcelo reluctantly opened it, revealing documents showing that the couple had been embezzling funds intended for Lara's care to maintain their luxurious lifestyle. "We need all of this," Elena whispered to Carlos, her professional tone barely masking her outrage. "This situation is even worse than we imagined. How could they?" Carlos's voice was heavy with decades of police experience. "She's just a child." As the investigation at the Silva mansion continued, Elena was having a delicate conversation with Lara at a temporary care center. A cozy room in soft colors, furnished warmly, offered a safe environment where the girl could freely express herself. "You know, Lara," Elena began, tucking a strand of graying hair behind her ear, "we found your special notebook." She carefully observed the girl's reaction as Lara hugged her teddy bear tighter. The child gently smiled, lighting up when she started talking about her uncle. "You wrote a lot about him. It must be important to have a place just for yourself." "That's my sister, Clara," Roberto explained, showing a photo of a smiling young woman. "She went through something similar in our childhood. Our parents were like Marcelo and Patricia, more concerned with appearances than feelings. Clara didn't survive the depression it caused. I promised myself I wouldn't let that happen to Lara. I tried," he sighed, running a hand over his tired face. "I filed anonymous complaints, talked to the school, but Marcelo always managed to smooth things over with money and influence. When I saw Lara losing weight and having more frequent anxiety attacks, I realized I had to do something more radical." In Elena's office, Lara started drawing again, this time, a small figure sitting at a table with an older figure, both smiling over what looked like a plate of food. Elena made another note in her notebook, observing how Lara's face brightened when talking about these moments. "And how do you feel when you're with your uncle?" Out in the hallway, Thor patiently waited by the door, listening to every sound. The dog had formed a special bond with Lara, as if recognizing a kind soul in need of protection. "We found something," an assistant informed Carlos, handing him a folder. The documents revealed a troubling pattern: frequent absences, fluctuating grades, and teachers' notes about the student often appearing tired or hungry. Elena's eyes filled with tears, though she maintained a professional composure. In her 40 years in social work, she had rarely witnessed such dedication and care as Roberto's toward his niece. "I want to go to him," Lara said. "He has a library full of interesting books and a little kitchen where he teaches me to bake cookies, and a garden where we watch the birds. I will fight for her," Roberto declared, his voice firm this time. "I won't let Marcelo's money and influence stop Lara from getting the love and care she deserves." The breakthrough came by accident, as is often the case in the most important investigations. A bank janitor, where Marcelo worked, found an envelope that had fallen behind a filing cabinet. One of those discoveries only made during a deep clean. The envelope's contents, handed over to the authorities that morning, were about to change everything. Officer Montenegro called the police station secretary, handing Carlos a brown envelope. "Just arrived. Marked urgent, related to the Silva case." "We need to talk," he said gravely, "and I think we should call the prosecution." The little investigator had uncovered something. Roberto stopped reading when Elena entered the room, her face a mixture of triumph and worry. In the courtroom, Carlos waited for the prosecutor, Dr. Beatriz Santos, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. On the table, the documents from the envelope were laid out in small stacks. The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Roberto, sitting nearby, gripped the armrest so tightly his knuckles turned white. Dr. Santos adjusted her glasses and began explaining. The documents show that Lara was illegally adopted. Beside Roberto, Elena gently placed a hand on his shoulder. This explains a lot about their behavior. She wasn't really their daughter. Lara was more of a prop, part of their perfect social image. The world seemed to freeze for a moment. Roberto felt the air leave his lungs, as if he'd been punched. "Clara," he repeated, his voice trembling. "But she died." Silent tears rolled down Roberto's face. Years of instinctively protecting Lara, that unexplainable connection he had always felt with his niece, now took on a heartbreaking new meaning. She wasn't just his niece. She was his great-niece, Clara's daughter, the daughter of the sister he couldn't save. "We have proof." "Yes," Carlos confirmed. "We found records of regular payments to a middleman who kept the secret. When they learned you were Clara's brother, they likely panicked." Lara continued listening to stories with Dr. Marina, while Thor lay loyally at her feet. Fate had woven a complex web, connecting past and present in a way no one could have foreseen. Roberto remained seated in the courtroom long after the revelations, holding an old photograph of Clara, one he always kept in his wallet. Elena and Carlos exchanged concerned looks, respecting the silence filled with emotion that now enveloped the room. Dr. Santos, with years of experience in sensitive cases, leaned forward in her chair. "We need to be very careful with this revelation. I suggest working with our team of psychologists to find the best approach." "How dare you?" Patricia Silva's voice shrieked. "You have no right to keep our daughter from us." She and Marcelo had arrived at the center accompanied by the stern-looking Dr. Montenegro. Their lawyer interrupted her, presenting some documents. "I have here a preliminary court order granting my client visitation rights." Patricia, her face a mask of indignation, tried to push forward. "What proof?" "It's all lies," she shouted, pointing at Roberto, who appeared in the doorway of the courtroom. Marcelo's face turned noticeably pale, and Patricia staggered, needing the support of her lawyer's arm. "What is she talking about, Marcelo?" she whispered. Marcelo remained silent. "It's starting to crack," Carlos explained, his professional voice becoming firmer. "We've found the original documents. We know about the illegal adoption scheme and the payments made to keep the truth about Lara's origins a secret." While this scene was unfolding in the hallway, in the library, Lara continued her session with Dr. Marina, completely unaware of the drama taking place just a few meters away. She had just finished a new drawing. A little girl holding hands with an older man, surrounded by books and flowers. "That's Uncle Roberto," she explained to the psychologist, pointing at the taller figure in the drawing. "He always makes me feel safe, like I finally found my place in the world." Back in the hallway, Roberto watched as the Silvas were escorted out of the center, his face a complex mix of emotions. Grief for Clara, anger over how Lara had been treated, but above all, a renewed determination to protect and love the girl who, as he now knew, was his beloved sister's last gift. Elena approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll make it right," she assured him. "Lara will have all the support and love she needs to get through this transition in her life." In the therapy room at the reception center, Dr. Marina had carefully prepared the setting for one of the most important conversations in Lara's life. Colorful pillows scattered on the floor created a cozy atmosphere, and on a low table, an old photo album waited. Roberto sat nervously on one of the pillows, his hands clenched on his knees, betraying his tension. Elena and Dr. Marina had spent hours with him the day before, preparing him for this moment. Tor, always sensitive to the emotional atmosphere, lay by the door like a silent guardian. When Laura entered the room, her eyes lit up at the sight of Roberto. "Uncle Roberto!" she exclaimed, running to him. The man wrapped her in a firm embrace, taking a deep breath to keep the emotions threatening to escape in check. The doctor picked up the photo album and placed it between them. "Laura, you've probably noticed a lot has been happening lately, right?" The girl nodded, her expression turning serious. "Today, your Uncle Roberto wants to tell you about someone very special." Roberto opened the album to the first page, where a photograph showed a young woman with dark hair and a warm smile, sitting on a garden swing. "This is Clara," he began softly. "My dear sister, my grandma Clara?" Laura asked, her eyes widening with curiosity. "Yes, sweetheart," Roberto confirmed, struggling to hold back tears. "Clara was a wonderful person, full of love and dreams." He paused, searching for the right words. "She was your mother's mother. So, Marcella and Patricia aren't my real parents?" Laura asked in a quiet but steady voice. Roberto turned a few more pages in the album, showing other photos of Clara, at a picnic, reading a book, smiling at the camera in different moments of her life. "Your grandmother Clara had a huge heart, but she also faced a lot of sadness. She left us before we got to know you, but I'm sure she's watching over you now." Laura absorbed every word, every image, with touching intensity. "That's why you always took care of me, right, Uncle Ro? Because you knew." The emotions thickened the air. Tor rested his head gently on Lara's lap, offering his own form of comfort. The girl instinctively began stroking his ears, a gesture that seemed to calm both her and the dog. "There's one more thing," Roberto continued, pulling a delicate star-shaped pendant on a chain from his pocket. This was Clara's favorite necklace. She always said stars guide us home no matter how lost we are. Now it's yours. "Can we look at more pictures?" Laura asked, scooting closer to Roberto. "I want to know everything about her." Roberto's house, a modest place in a quiet neighborhood, had undergone a subtle transformation in the following weeks. The guest room, once a neutral space filled with stacked books, now had freshly painted lavender walls, floral curtains, and an antique writing desk Roberto had restored especially for Laura. "What do you think of this?" he asked, holding up a crescent moon-shaped lamp. They were in a local decor store, picking the final touches for the room. Temporary custody had been granted to Roberto under regular supervision from child services. Laura smiled, her eyes sparkling with a joy that had become more and more frequent. "It's perfect. We can put it next to the bookshelf." She clutched the star pendant she rarely took off. On the way home, they stopped at a small market in the neighborhood. Roberto had developed a habit of involving Laura in all household decisions, from choosing cereal flavors to what vegetables to serve for dinner. The social worker happily accepted an invitation to join and noted how confidently Laura moved through the market, helping Roberto pick ingredients. It was a simple, everyday scene, but one full of meaning, compared to the sterile environment the girl had left behind. In the kitchen, Roberto and Laura, now naturally a father and daughter in all but official terms, worked in harmony. Laura had her own apron, decorated with kitten prints, and a safe step stool that let her reach the counter. "Did she like this too?" Laura asked. Roberto smiled. The question touched sweet memories. "Yes, she loved it. This soup recipe was actually one of her favorites." She always said that good food needs two special ingredients: love and stories. You know, he added, we found more pictures of your grandma. Some of them are from the botanical garden where she worked as a guide. She knew the name of every flower and loved telling stories about them. Meanwhile, at the prosecutor's office, Dr. Santos reviewed the latest updates in the Silva case. Investigations revealed a complex network of illegal adoptions. Both Marcella and Patricia now faced serious charges. Their bank accounts had been frozen and their social influence diminished. At Roberto's house, dinner unfolded in a warm atmosphere. Laura excitedly shared her new school project, a presentation on the solar system, inspired by her new moon-shaped lamp. Elena made another mental note, impressed by how Laura had begun to process and verbalize. A new photo joined the family memory collection, Laura and Roberto on the day of her official move, smiling at the camera, with Tor loyally sitting beside them. The three radiated the genuine joy of a new beginning. An autumn morning brought the first true challenge since Laura had moved into Roberto's home. The girl woke up screaming, haunted by nightmares blending memories of lonely nights in the Silva mansion with vague fears of abandonment. But this wasn't just a dream, they both knew it. It was the past returning to haunt her, emotional wounds that needed time to heal. Dr. Marina had warned about this during her sessions, that there would be setbacks, hard days among the progress. Roberto sat close, letting her curl up beside him. It won't happen again, sweetheart, he whispered. We're safe now. We're together. Do you want me to tell you a story about your Grandma Clara? Laura nodded, still trembling slightly. Roberto got comfortable on the bed, his back resting against the headboard, and began to speak. When we were kids, Clara also had nightmares. You know what she did? She made up stories about the stars. She said that each star in the sky was a guiding light, protecting anyone who needed to find their way home. As he spoke, Roberto gently led Laura to the bedroom window. Together, they watched the still dark dawn sky, speckled with a few stubborn stars resisting the sunrise. That same morning, during her regular session with Dr. Marina, Laura was working on a new drawing, different from the previous ones, full of bright colors and joy. This one showed shadows and fears, but also points of light scattered across the dark paper. Dr. Marina observed as Laura added a protective figure to the drawing. Roberto, represented as a guardian between her and the shadows. It's okay to be afraid, Laura, the doctor said softly. What matters is knowing we can talk about our fears and get help. These are moonflowers, Laura explained excitedly. Her hands were dirty from the soil, showing that the fear of the morning had already given way to a therapeutic activity. Uncle Roberto said they were Grandma Clara's favorite because they glow in the dark, like stars in the garden. Yes, Laura, she answered with new enthusiasm. We'll make a whole flower bed, and when they bloom, I'll be able to see their light from my window, so I'll never feel alone in the dark again. We're also thinking of adopting a kitten, Roberto commented later to Elena. Dr. Marina had suggested that a pet might be therapeutic, and Laura had always wanted one, though it had never been allowed in the Silva household. Silva, Laura laughed, her crystal-clear voice warming the hearts of everyone who heard it. Thor, our special friend, was the first to realize I needed help. Are you sure you want to go, sweetheart? Roberto asked gently, watching the determination on the girl's face. Dr. Marina reminded them that Laura didn't need to testify directly if she didn't want to. Elena, who had come to accompany them, watched the interaction with admiration. In her 40 years of social work, she had rarely seen such strength in someone so young. Marcelo and Patricia Silva entered under escort. Their expensive clothing couldn't hide the weight of the accusations against them. Patricia tried to smile at Laura, but the girl instinctively moved closer to Roberto. Thor stood protectively in front of her. Prosecutor Santos methodically presented the evidence: falsified adoption documents, fabricated payment records, proof of ongoing neglect. But it was Lara's recorded testimony, played on video to avoid direct confrontation, that silenced the courtroom. They never asked me if I was hungry, or sad, or scared. They only wanted to know if I looked good in pictures, if I was smiling the right way. Uncle Roberto was the only one who really saw me. During a break, Roberto and Lara waited in a separate room with Elena and Thor. The girl absent-mindedly played with the dog's ears, comforted by his steady presence. When the trial resumed, the judge, a woman with silver hair and perceptive eyes, invited Lara for a brief chat in her chambers. It was an informal process meant to confirm the child's wishes. He taught me that family isn't just the ones who look good in photos, but the ones who care about us truly care, who make us feel loved, even when we're sad or scared. At the sentencing, Patricia finally broke her composed facade. "You can't do this," she shouted, standing up abruptly. "We spent so much money. We gave her everything." "Uncle Roberto," Lara called gently, "can we stop by the botanical garden on the way home? I want to leave some flowers for Grandma Clara." Thor, still beside them, wagged his tail as if approving the plan. The dog who started this whole journey remained a constant, protective presence in their lives. Spring arrived, bringing with it a wave of renewal for Roberto and Lara's home. The backyard, once a modest space with a few basic plants, had been transformed into a sanctuary. The moonflowers, planted months earlier, had begun to bloom, creating a magical scene at twilight. Roberto joined her at the window, his heart warmed by hearing how she now called him. The transition from uncle to dad had happened spontaneously, a reflection of the deep bond they had built. "You know," Lara commented, petting Galileo, their family cat, "Dr. Marina said today will be our last regular session. From now on, I only need to see her once a month." In that final session, Lara presented a project she had prepared. A memory album combining old photos of Clara with recent moments from her new life. Dr. Marina watched as Lara spoke about her past, not with fear or anger, but with understanding and acceptance. "And how do you feel about everything that happened?" That evening, Elena made her final official supervision visit, finding the family in the kitchen baking a chocolate cake. Lara's new passion ever since Roberto began teaching her to cook. Elena smiled, remembering the frightened girl she had met months ago in the mall parking lot. The transformation was clear. Regular visits from Officer Carlos and Thor had turned into true friendship. Inspired by Lara's story, Carlos had decided to expand the police emotional support dog program. Elena made her last notes as she observed a home now filled with love and life. The once bare walls now displayed Lara's drawings, happy moments and photographs, and in a special place above the fireplace, a portrait of Clara smiled down at them. Roberto hugged his daughter, accidentally getting dirty with chocolate, just like in the Silva house. Lara laughed and returned the favor, leaving a chocolate smudge on her father's nose. A year had passed since that fateful day in the mall parking lot. The backyard of Roberto and Lara's house had been specially decorated for a very special celebration. Soft lights hung between the trees, tables with white tablecloths held homemade treats, and the moonflowers glowed gently as dusk fell. It was the official day of Lara's adoption celebration. Though the papers had been signed 8 months earlier, they had waited for spring, when the garden would be at its most beautiful, to celebrate. A quiet tribute to Clara. "More than perfect," Roberto said proudly, watching his daughter carefully arrange every detail of the party. At the center of the main table, a new photo album awaited memories from this special night. Guests began to arrive. Elena, now a close family friend, brought a bouquet of wildflowers. Officer Carlos arrived with Thor. The German Shepherd wore a bow tie for the occasion. Dr. Marina brought a gift wrapped in starry paper. Galileo, the family cat, watched everything from his privileged perch on the windowsill, occasionally exchanging glances with Thor, a remarkable friendship that had grown over time. "He's my guardian angel on 4 legs," Lara smiled, stroking the dog's ears. "Just like Dad. My guardian angel on 2. As the sun began to set, Roberto gathered everyone for a special moment in the center of the garden. He and Lara had prepared a small ceremony. Lara held her father's hand. "We also thank everyone who helped us on this journey. Grandma Clara, who guided us like a star in the sky. Thor, who first noticed I needed help. Elena, who believed in us. Dr. Marina, who helped me find my voice." Together, father and daughter lit small paper lanterns, a tradition they created for special moments. The lanterns floated gently into the night sky, joining the first stars that began to appear. "They'll join the stars," Lara said before Roberto could speak, "to remind everyone who needs to find their way home that true love will always guide us." "Dad," Lara called, "do you think Grandma Clara is proud of us?" In the new album on the table, the first photo of the evening showed father and daughter smiling, surrounded by the glowing moonflowers, with Thor and Galileo completing the family portrait. Below the photo, Lara had written in her neat handwriting, "Because family is where love finds its way home."